Hello, everybody. I'm Lisa Maynard. I'm going to share my screen here. So tonight we're talking about Project 2025's impact on reproductive health and reproductive rights. I'm Lisa Maynard. I am a therapist, a training and implementation specialist. I teach yoga and meditation, and I'm also an adoptive parent. And this particular topic is near and dear to my heart and has sort of run chills up and down my spine. I joined the Project 2025 team of Rochester for Harris with these amazing women. feel so lucky to be in their group here, and really concerned both for our democracy and for women's rights because of what the opposition is spouting, for sure. So just a real quick overview. We've talked about this a number of times, but just for those of you who haven't been on or seen other presentations, the agenda 47 really is reflective of Project 2025, and it's the whole mandate for leadership is meant to consolidate power with the presidency. And that is that's really scary. It's power to the president. There's a personnel database to streamline appointments, to create LinkedIn for Trump loyalists, Christian nationalists, and so on, so that really those people who surround the president are totally drinking the Kool-Aid, basically, and are only supportive of him. So in the last time he was president, he had advisors who were like, yeah, no, we're not doing that, who really were very adamant that he was trying to do things that were not legal and against the Constitution. There's a Presidential Administration Academy, which I thought was really interesting. This is to train the newcomers and build a pipeline. It's a one-of-a-kind educational and skill-building program designed to prepare and equip future political appointees who are now ready on day one of the next conservative administration. So this is whether it's another Trump administration or in 2029, there's a conservative president elected. The Academy provides aspiring appointees with the insight, background knowledge, and expertise in government to begin rolling back destructive policy and advancing conservative ideas in federal government. And again, just really sends chills up my spine to be thinking about that. We're going to indoctrinate a whole level of government that says we're going to do what's in this Project 2025. And the playbook is ready to move on day one. So basically what they say is their beliefs rule. So whatever the authors of Project 2025 have decided is what's right, that their beliefs rule. Family is a married father, that's a male, and a mother, female, with children that are born to them. They're against reproductive freedom, reproductive rights. They are scapegoating LGBTQ and transgender people, starting on page 1. And Carol and Harry talked about this on our webinar on Tuesday, about how it's really woven throughout that there's so much attention to transgender and LGBTQ that it sort of boggles the mind. It's not a huge population, but they're really targeting those folks. And then the policies are very often contradictory. For instance, wanting to reverse child labor laws, really doing away with a lot of the protections for families, right? They're all about family except how they want it. So the mandate for leadership allows us the freedom, in quotes, to do what they say and live life as they wish us to live. Again, this is how, it goes back to the academy. We're going to train you to know how to talk and legislate so that everything is the way we want it to be. And Kamala Harris has made her position clear. Freedom means freedom for everybody. Project 2025 mentions abortion over 198 times. And it's woven into foreign aid, international relations, and then also in domestic relations. So again, throughout the document, throughout this manual, this mandate for leadership, they talk about abortion over and over again. In June 2022, the US Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, opening the door for states to ban abortion outright. This is a map that shows where there is access that has, in some cases, been expanded, where it's protected, where it's not protected, where it's restrictive, and where it's illegal. And I thought this was a real important map to show. I mean, this shows us where women are going to have to go in the next, in the near future, if they want to pursue an abortion, a legal abortion, and in many cases to get the medical care that they need if they're having a miscarriage. Former President Trump says he has no regrets that his hand-picked Supreme Court justices overturned Roe v. Wade and ended the constitutional right to abortion. And in the aftermath of the ruling, abortion regulation is an ever-changing patchwork. So what we see on the map today is subject to change. 14 states have banned abortion. Half a dozen others have implemented gestational restrictions from 6 weeks to 15 weeks. And some are trying to get abortion just totally outright banned altogether. Amendments to protect abortion have won in every state where they've been on the ballot, but many of the states have banned abortion outright. So really something to be paying attention to. And in the PowerPoint, which you'll have, I've got citations for all of the statistics I'm talking about. So some of the repercussions since the overturn of Roe v. Wade, again, it happened in June of 2022. There's increased restrictions on abortion. As I mentioned, the 14 states that have banned abortion. There's increased risk of illegal abortions. It's put many women at the risk of severe mental health consequences. What am I going to do with this unplanned pregnancy? Or what am I going to do if I'm having a miscarriage and I don't know where to go and how to get adequate medical care, right? Which will put my body at risk and therefore really making it very scary. Increased restrictions to a woman's right to bodily autonomy. We're going to talk about that a little bit. What data is on the books to be collected. Increased risk to LGBTQ rights, a rise in anti-choice activities around the world, the IVF clinics that have been closing because there's so much disinformation and misunderstanding and fear, basically, about what is being done and what is legal and what's not legal, who's going to get in trouble and who's not. Some say that the overturn of Roe v. Wade is closely related to the federal protection of marriage equality and LGBT rights. And there have been increased anti-choice activities, as I said, worldwide. So despite the majority of Americans supporting comprehensive health care and reproductive freedom, Project 2025 would prefer a far different reality. Their attacks would undermine Medicare, would keep prescription drug prices high, and restrict access to reproductive care. About 3/4 of women ages 18 to 44 say that they're concerned that access to women's reproductive health and preventive services may be limited by the new rules that don't allow clinics that provide abortions or refer for abortions to receive federal funding. And so those clinics not only provide abortion care, they provide contraceptives, they provide pap smears and mammograms and all kinds of services that are really protective of women's health and women's ability to stay healthy throughout her lifetime. The poll finds agreement across party lines on the issue of federal funding to groups that promote abstinence-only or natural family planning methods. They're saying that they don't want abstinence-only methods. They want comprehensive information about family planning, right? We need something other than, just say no. It didn't work. It doesn't work. And the access to contraceptives is a very important part of family planning. The Republicans oppose federal funding going to organizations that provide that comprehensive care. So restricting funding to those agencies. Majorities across party identification also oppose allowing federal funding going to organizations that promote abstinence-only programs and that don't teach young people about contraception, safe family planning, and also STD prevention. Hello, right? It's kind of crazy when you think about it. Let's not talk about STD prevention. So this act, the Ensuring Accurate and Complete Abortion Data Reporting Act of 2023, would amend Title Title 19, yes, to improve the CDC's abortion reporting. So what this means is they want to follow and create a database of anyone who's had an abortion, a miscarriage. It treats any death of a child, incidental death of a child, such as the death of a child when a woman has undergone chemotherapy and she has a miscarriage. That would be part of this abortion monitoring system. And every instance, and also reporting for complications due to abortion, and every instance of children being born alive after an abortion. Which, like, is that even a thing? I don't think that's even a thing. I was not able to find any data on that. I think it's just made up, and it's fear-mongering. Moreover, abortion should be clearly defined as only those procedures that intentionally end in an unborn child's life. Miscarriage management or standard ectopic pregnancies shouldn't be conflated with abortion, except that we're going to be collecting information on every one of those. And so the potential for conflating those statistics is extremely high and extremely scary. Because liberal states have now become, this is a quote from the Mandate for Leadership, because liberal states have now become sanctuaries for abortion tourism. People are making a vacation out of going to states for an abortion that have legalized abortion. The Health and Human Services should use every available tool, including cutting of funds, to ensure that every state reports exactly how many abortions take place within its borders, at what gestational age, for what reason, and the mother's state of residence, and by what method. So really taking over our health data, right? It says also, and again, I've put the citations on the page and also in the notes at the end. The CDC should eliminate programs and projects that do not respect human life and conscious rights that undermine family formation. It should ensure that the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, is not promoting abortion as healthcare. From the Mandate for Leadership, around page 458, the anti-abortion extremists behind the Project 2025, they're not content with merely overturning Roe v. Wade. They want to attack access to medication abortion nationwide by any means necessary. They propose reversing federal approval of medication abortion that can deprive people of essential health care, even in states where abortion remains legal. Where it's banned or restricted, this would further subject people to the whims of state legislatures, many of which have actively pushed or enacted abortion restrictions since the overturn of Roe v. Wade. Mifepristone is a drug that blocks a hormone called progesterone, and it's needed for pregnancy to continue. The progesterone is needed for the pregnancy to continue. When it's used with another medication, it's used to end pregnancy through 10 weeks of gestation, or up to 70 days or less of the last menstrual period. This is not a late-term abortion procedure. Over 2 decades of medical practice, it is shown that this medication is safe and effective. In fact, last year, nearly 2/3 of all pregnant people relied on this medication for their abortion care, as well as for the treatment of a miscarriage. This is one of the last lifelines for millions of pregnant people across the United States, as many governments are racking up, local governments are racking up their attacks. So how do they plan to do it? They plan to end medication and limit access to medication, make it incredibly difficult to access. Project 2025 would revoke approval from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, criminalizing mailing of medication abortion, or even enlist the Environmental Protection Agency as part of their anti-abortion efforts. And this was surprising to us when we were going through this. It's like, wait a minute, the EPA? What the heck? That doesn't even make any sense. And they also want to undo Medicare's new ability to negotiate drug prices. Project 2025 would weaponize the long dormant Comstock Act, which has been said to be like just not something that would be used in this instance. It doesn't make any sense. Despite the Department of Justice, the courts, and the Congress already making clear that the Comstock Act does not apply to legal abortion care. Project 2025 plans to weaponize it. So what that means is that they would reimpose unnecessary and burdensome requirements that mifepristone be dispensed in person and only by a doctor. So it can't be mailed as it is being done now. Can't be mailed from state to state. It makes that illegal. Post-obs, the FDA has played an important role by allowing that distribution by mail and at certain pharmacies. This has allowed increased access to care, given that not everyone has the privilege of convenient in-person doctor access. If these plans were implemented, it will become harder for everyone to access abortion care, especially low-income pregnant people and those in rural communities. And again, this is spelled out very clearly in the mandate for leadership. And Trump's Agenda 47 really is reflective of all of these mandates as well. So to Connor's question, what the heck does it mean that the EPA would be used to restrict regulations in medication? So what they're proposing is that the EPA classify mifepristone as a forever chemical. A forever chemical is those things that are like in aerosols and in Teflon pans and in carpeting, in some makeup, the things that are that last forever in our environment, that get into the water, that get into the air. And they're saying that mifepristone should be labeled as a PFAS, right? And I can't pronounce what PFAS stands for, so I'm not even going to try. There's a group of about 4,500 synthetic chemicals that are classified as PFASs. And all of the scientists, the Center for Biological Diversity, the environmental scientists say there is absolutely no evidence that this is an environmental issue. It is not eliminated and getting into our water system or into our air system when a person uses mifepristone. So really absurd, but this is the way that the administration is trying to or looking to twist the regulations that are already in effect and make them make sense, which they don't. So in the immediate aftermath of Dobbs again, the Biden administration issued HIPAA guidance to ensure that doctors and other medical providers and health plans know that with limited exceptions, they are not required, and in many cases, not even permitted to disclose patients' private information, including law enforcement, right? Our HIPAA is protected information. Our health information is protected information. And the Biden administration has put in guidance that says that that has to stay in place. As more states move to pass increasingly severe efforts to criminalize abortion, this would put medical providers in jeopardy. So what they're looking to do in Mandate for Leadership is to get rid of those protections, basically get rid of HIPAA as it applies to women who are seeking healthcare, reproductive healthcare. By the way, this is about women, right? This is all about women, women's healthcare. This doesn't say anything about any kind of men's reproductive health issues. Conservatives in the states and in Washington, D.C., including the next administration, should push as hard as possible to protect the unborn in every jurisdiction in America. This is on page 6 of the Mandate for Leadership. And so as we discussed in Tuesday's webinar on LGBTQ plus rights, case law defining privacy, that means your right to be free from searches under the Bill of Rights, your right to privacy in your home, your right to freedom of religion, your right to your own private dignity. The Supreme Court, stacked by the Trump-appointed ultra-conservative justices, is looking to overturn all of these cases. Who you love, who you marry, how you worship. This is terrifying to me. This is very, very scary. So while Project 2025 does not mention IVF or propose restricting it specifically, it does contain language that experts say can threaten the practice. I don't know if anybody heard what Trump said. I think it was just last night when he asked about IVF 2 nights ago. Yeah. He said, I am the father of IVF. And it was, it's like, he doesn't even know what that means. He didn't even know what that means. And he said, I didn't even know what that means until a fabulously attractive woman told me what it meant about 2 minutes ago. Right? How people don't believe he's unhinged is just beyond me. So Project 2025's Health and Human Services section also says that the HHS secretary should pursue a robust agenda to protect the fundamental right to life, protect conscious rights, and uphold bodily integrity rooted in biological realities, not ideology. From the moment of conception, every human being possesses inherent dignity and worth, and our humanity does not depend on our age, stage of development, race, or abilities. So the fetus, so this picture that you see right here, the egg being fertilized by a sperm would be considered a human being. The section continues that the secretary must ensure that all HHS programs and activities are rooted in a deep respect for the innocent human life from day one, from conception until natural death. The experts say that this reflects the thrust of fetal personhood and the belief that the legal rights of people should extend to fetuses or embryos. So that fetal personhood, what that means, there was an act that was proposed introduced in chambers of Congress last year, the Life at Conception Act, HR 431 in the 118th Congress, which would extend fetuses and embryos a constitutional right to life, beginning at the moment of fertilization. It has 164 co-sponsors in the U.S. House of Representatives. So in theory, fetal personhood laws could impact the use of in vitro fertilization, IVF, a procedure that combines a combination of medicines and surgical procedures to help sperm fertilize an egg and then implant the embryo into the uterus. A round of IVF can create multiple embryos, which can be frozen indefinitely. I've worked in this area for about 35 years. I've worked with many, many clients who have used IVF to conceive and then either have multiple embryos implanted or have them frozen. That puts into question all of those embryos. What happens to them? And do they would be constitutionally allowed the same rights as you and I? That embryo that's frozen in storage somewhere. Fetal personhood laws could also impact contraception access, given that some members of the anti-abortion movement argue that IUDs and emergency contraception Plan B can prevent the implantation of a fertilized egg and violate personhood. So contraception is on the line, right? Contraception is on the line. If you think that this isn't something that can really happen, just Roe v. Wade was never going to be overturned. These are things that can happen. These restrictive laws put women's lives at risk. And we've seen that in a number of cases already, a number of cases that have been public already. The 2 Texas women who were denied abortion care for life-threatening ectopic pregnancies, they filed complaints with the Biden administration calling for investigations into hospitals violating federal law. So without that intervention, without that medication, they're at risk of getting sepsis, of dying. They're at risk of dying. And what the hospitals have said, what the doctors have said in those cases, I think they both traveled to other states to get care and almost died. They were in such dire medical need, they couldn't get it in their own state. They had to travel across state lines. And imagine that. I can't get what I need, so I've got to travel from Texas to a state that allows abortion care. Texas to New York. Imagine driving all that way, being deathly ill, and the worry of not being able to survive. One of the women nearly bled to death as she was forced into emergency surgery and had to have her fallopian tube removed. Both of these women had to have medical procedures that impact their ability to conceive in the future. Mm-hmm. So let's let's be all about family, right? Let's be all about making sure women are able to have babies. So while Texas carries one of the strictest abortion bans in the US, treatment for ectopic pregnancy is explicitly allowed under the state abortion law and not considered abortion. But the doctors are so worried about being penalized, being called into question, being jailed, thank you, for violating the state's abortion ban. Again, it includes up to $100,000 in fines and up to life in prison in Texas, life in prison, right? So it's instilled such fear in these doctors that they're not willing to provide the care that's needed in these really serious situations. Since Roe v. Wade was overturned, Vice President Harris, our candidate Harris, has driven the administration's strategy to defend reproductive freedom and safeguard the privacy of patients and providers. As Governor Tim Walz led Minnesota to become the first state to pass a law protecting a woman's right to choose following the overturn of Roe v. Wade. They've traveled all over America, and they've heard the stories of women hurt by Trump's abortion bans, and the stories continue to grow. As our president, Harris will not allow a national abortion ban to become law, and when Congress passes a bill to restore reproductive freedom nationwide, she has vowed to sign it. So just a couple other sort of things that I think are really related to reproductive rights and women's rights. Republicans will promote a culture that values the sanctity of marriage, the sanctity of marriage, right? As they define it, and the blessings of childhood, the foundational role of family, and supports working parents. It will end policies that punish families. The mandate, and I'm not even sure what those policies are that punish families. And maybe Connor, you can enlighten us if there are any. And this is from early in the beginning of the mandate for leadership. Families are comprised, as they're defined, of a married mother, a woman, a father, who's a male, and their children that are biologically related to them. And this is the foundation, they say, of a well-ordered nation and a healthy society. Okay, that sounds like The Handmaid's Tale to me. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, family policies and programs, this is a quote from the mandate of leadership for leadership. Unfortunately, family policies and programs under President Biden's HHS are fraught with agenda items focusing on LGBTQ plus equality, subsidizing single motherhood, disincentivizing work, this is for the men, of course, and penalizing marriage. It also says that the next conservative administration, whether it's President Trump or in the next election in 2029, should remove all references, examples, definitions, photographs, and language on USAID websites, in agency publications and policies, and in all agency contracts and grants that include the following terms: gender, gender equality, gender equity, gender diverse individuals, gender aware, gender sensitive, etc. It should also remove references to abortion, reproductive health, and sexual and reproductive rights, controversial sexual education materials. We don't want anything that says anything except abstinence is the only way. And that's on page 259 of the Mandate for Leadership. These policies should be repealed and replaced by policies that support the formation of stable, married, nuclear families, from page 451. I just want to mention that I've been working in child welfare for a long time, and we had the agency I was working for had a grant that said that at the time Trump was president, we were not allowed to mention diversity, equity, and inclusion. So these are things that can really happen. As part of our grant, we were doing child welfare work in urban and rural and suburban areas, cross-cultural diversities. We were not allowed to use anything that related to diversity, equity, and inclusion in any of our statements, in any of our presentations, in any of our talks about any of our writings. So this is not sort of a far-fetched idea. This is very, very real. It also says the next administration should create a dedicated special representative for domestic women's health. Doesn't that sound like, oh, how nice. They're going to be worried about domestic women's health. Men and women are biological realities that are crucial to the advancement of life sciences and medical care, and that married men and women are the ideal natural family structure because all children have a right to be raised by men and women who conceived them. It's on page 489. By the men and women who conceived them. I will say again, having worked in this arena for many, many years, there are more than 400,000 children who are in our U.S. foster care system today. There are over 120,000 children who are awaiting adoption in our country today. They're available and parental rights have been terminated and are waiting for an adoptive family. This mandate for leadership excludes them. It excludes families like mine. I adopted my children internationally. Puts that at risk. And by the way, the immigration we heard a couple of weeks ago talks about denaturalizing citizens. My children are naturalized citizens, or United States citizens that happened when they were babies, and they're at risk of having their naturalization revoked and returned home, which is outrageous because Korea hasn't been their home for over 35 years. Also, it affects surrogacy, absolutely affects surrogacy, single parenthood, IVF, embryo adoption, all of these things are at risk when we talk about family structure being only by the men and women who conceive them. By the way, this also isolates and excludes women who have infertility, women and men who experience infertility and want to be parents, but then would not be able to become parents. Vice President Harris and Governor Walz believe that fundamental freedoms are at stake at this election, as do we, for sure. They will fight to ensure that Americans have the opportunity to participate in our democracy by passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Acts, laws that will enshrine voting rights protections and expand voting by mail, early voting, and more. Super important in this election and every election down the road. Her administration will continue to protect Americans from discrimination, building on her work to secure $2 million in funding for the offices of civil rights across federal government. And as president, she'll always defend the freedom to love who you love openly and with pride. Love who you love openly and with pride. In 2004, she officiated some of the nation's first same-sex marriages as Attorney General, and she refused to defend California's anti-marriage equality statewide referendum. As president, she'll fight to pass the Equality Act to enshrine anti-discrimination protections for LGBTQ+ Americans in healthcare, housing, education, and more into law. In this election, many fundamental freedoms are at stake. The freedom to make your own decisions about your own body without government interference, the freedom who you love, again, openly and with pride, and those freedoms unlock all the other freedoms, including the right to vote. So Vice President Harris is doing things to protect families and increase the ability of families to be able to take care of their families. Starting to unveil her economic plans, she's proposed a $6,000 tax credit for parents of newborns, as well as bringing back the pandemic-era expanded child tax credit. Pre-pandemic, the credit gave parents up to $2,000 per child as a tax credit. So not as a tax deduction, but as an actual tax credit that went against what you owe in taxes. It came with an earning requirement that was paid in one lump sum at tax time. The Pandemic Rescue Plan raised the credit to $3,600 per child under 6 and $3,000 for children under the age of 18. So between the ages of 6 and 18, it was $3,000. Vice President Harris plans to have Medicare cover home care costs for the sandwich generation. This is families who are taking care of children and their parents, and there is a lot of that. Many, many of my friends are in this situation right now. As president, she'll fight to lower care costs for American families, expanding high-quality home care services for seniors and people with disabilities, and ensuring hardworking families can afford high-quality childcare, and not what the mandate for leadership proposes, which is aunties and uncles, well, aunties, I'm sorry, not uncles, because they're going to be working. Aunties and grandmas are going to be taking care of all our babies. without remuneration, by the way. There's so many people in our country who are right in the middle. They're taking care of kids while taking care of aging parents, and it's almost impossible to do it all, especially if they work. This is what Harris said. She said she would negotiate Medicare drugs and expand those negotiations, right, to give us more protections. From Mandate for Leadership, the next conservative president must make institutions of American civil society hard targets for woke cultural warriors, changing and not allowing sex education unless it pertains to abstinence, taking gender and identity out of everything that we do. A boy is a boy, a girl is a girl. Men love women, women only love men. You can only marry the opposite sex, and so on. And we as women don't have choice in what we do with our bodies. Taking away safety nets is part of the plan, which again, I'm not sure how this serves families, but this is in the plan. Home-based childcare over universal daycare, that's on page 846. Aunties and grandmas will be taking care of the babies. Eliminate Head Start programs, redefine lunch qualifications in the program itself, taking away free lunch for families who are in poor areas who can't provide enough food for their children. Let's not give those kids any food so that they have the brain power to learn in school. Taking away baby formula regulations, labeling regulations, and regulations that they deem unnecessarily delay manufacture and sale of baby formula across the country. That's on page 302. Remove the regulation that requires only meat and poultry from federally inspected facilities can be sold interstate. So taking away all the FDA approvals and regulations on the foods that we eat. Okay, everything, by the way, except abortion care medications. And then eliminate child labor laws. I want to put a plug in here for the New York State Equal Rights Amendment. I've been seeing signs that are disturbing that say vote no because it takes away parental rights. The proposition says nothing whatsoever about taking away parental rights. What Prop 1 does is it closes loopholes in the state constitution to make sure that no New Yorker can be discriminated against by the government, regardless of gender, age, ethnicity, pregnancy status, disability status, or whether someone is LGBTQ. Those in power should never be able to take advantage of any New Yorker, especially the most vulnerable among us. That's all that says. So vote yes. Vice President Harris's fight for freedom for our future is a fight for our freedom. And I think we need to pay very close attention to that. We need to get out the vote. What can we do? So understand that if the authors of Project 2025 don't make it in this year's election, if they don't get Trump elected, which we are fighting mightily against, they will put it back on the election in 2029. So what can we do? Learn and understand. If you haven't seen some of our other webinars, take a look at them. We have talked in detail about a number of subjects. Make calls, postcards, register voters, knock on doors. Connor and a bunch of other people are going on buses, I think this weekend and in upcoming weekends. Share these recordings. Again, they'll be available to everybody. We're going to make sure that you all get the email and have access to the recordings. They're going to be up on YouTube. And don't stop. Don't think, okay, phew, we've got it done. We did the work. The election's only 3 weeks away. I think we can relax and sit back. We cannot sit back. We have to fight until the very last day. Make sure that all your friends and families know about the election, make sure they have a plan. If they don't have a plan, if they need a ride, get them a ride. And if you need somebody to help them get a ride, call us because we will run around picking up people. I know I will, and I'm sure a lot of the people sitting at the table with me will as well. Visit our Facebook page. There's lots of information there. Postcard postage.
You can do that.
Right. If you don't have time to write postcards, Young Democrats is asking for donations to buy stamps because they've exhausted their funds. I read, gosh, it's probably several weeks ago that there have been millions that have been sent out across the country. So the effort is real and strong. And I'm not going to believe the polls. I believe that Harris is going to win. I believe she's ahead, and hopefully our dreams come true.
Lisa, thank you so much, because this is a huge, huge part of what Project 2025 and Agenda 47 is all about. And I do want to, I put in the chat a little bit about some of the things, the fetal personhood. One of the reasons that they want to push that is that's how they're going to force states like New York to comply. Because if a fetus is a person, they're entitled to the 14th Amendment protections, and they're entitled to all of that. So no matter what regulations New York State has in place, their personhood is going to trump that. One of the reasons why I think Prop 1 is so important is because that puts it into the New York State Constitution. So at least we have a potential fight against personhood, to allow women to be human beings. And so I want you to really think about that. They're fighting it very hard. I saw in the chat something about sports. They're saying that this will allow boys to play in girls' sports. And it's just baloney. It's baloney. It's like what happened with the ERA, which I'm old enough to remember the discussion there. They used to say, Phyllis Schlafly did this whole thing with the horrors of not having same-sex bathrooms and all that. Yeah, well, now we have a few of those in a lot of places, and if you've traveled around the world, they're very common. You have your own stall, and it's not that big a deal. But that was the horror that Phyllis Schlafly had, and now we're talking sports as another horror, or parental rights, which is a vague term that they just keep spouting.
Or the right, you're going to send your child to school, a boy, and they're going to come home a girl.
Oh, yeah. This is what Trump is talking about, as if that were even possible. I mean, when we were talking on Tuesday night about the medical requirements, the logistics of it, just the sheer physical act of doing the changes without the requirements for mental health. These are just for an adult to do it. It takes years. So for a child to be able to go in the morning and then come home, I saw one meme that said, if you drop off your daughter and you pick up a boy at the end of the day, go back to school because you've taken the wrong child. And that's what it really is. I mean, it is so exactly absurd. It's transgender scares. The other things that I wanted to touch on when we were talking on Tuesday, it relates directly to this, because the development of the right to privacy, our right to bodily autonomy, is not listed in the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. Where it is found is by extrapolation from the concepts of the right to be free from illegal searches and seizures, and the right to have the freedom of religion and the freedom of speech and the right to assemble. Okay, those rights are enumerated in the Constitution. It goes all the way back to Loving versus Virginia, which allowed for interracial marriage. And then there was another case of Griswold, whether married people were entitled to getting contraceptives. And that's what they want to do away with. They want to do away with Griswold, which was married couple getting contraceptives. That's really taken us way back. And the only reason that they're not attacking, in my opinion, the only reason that they're not attacking Loving versus Virginia is because Clarence Thomas is married to a white woman. And so they're waiting for him to leave the bench. And then they'll attack that one. This is white Christian nationalists who don't deserve the term Christian. So that's my little rant for that. So what do? Mobilize. You can go to the Rochester for Harris site and events and sign up for phone banking. The phone calls are going out. And if you understand how Mobilize and the Harris technology works, the other thing that that I really want you all to do and have everyone in your family do and everyone you know do is vote early. Because the minute you vote, the technology that Harris's campaign has says, okay, Conor O'Brien voted. Great, we don't have to call her. Great, we don't need to drop off lights. No, great, we don't have to do that. So the people that we will be calling between now and election day or the day of election, they're only going to be the people who haven't voted yet. Okay, so it will cut down the burden of the entire national campaign if everyone within the sound of my voice votes early at your earliest opportunity, and make sure that everyone you know in every other state does it too. So that's important.
Anybody have any comments, any questions?
Judy just said vote early.
Vicky had a question.
Did you have a question, Vicky?
I did have a question. I had a comment, so I don't know, is this a good moment for it?
Yeah.
So, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is the law of unintended consequences, even for the people who wrote Project 2025 and Vance, who is a natalist. If we haven't read about the whole thing about, wanting lots of babies to be born. No, he wants only particular kinds of babies to be born, but, so if you want a lot of babies to be born, even if it's just of a particular sort, you're probably going to need some medical care, right? Well, almost all of my career, I worked with medical students and residents. And I can tell you, even before all of this business came up, the medical students and residents who actually, well, residents already had made a declaration. Medical students who had a deep interest in OBGYN had to really dig deep within themselves to see if that's something they wanted to do, given how litigious and difficult and politically fraught this already was before any of this latest stuff had happened. We already know that clinics have shut down. Doctors are moving out of states where these reproductive rights have been circumscribed because it's just too hard to do business there without fear of getting punished in some way. I think it's very likely that a lot of young medical students who are sitting there right now are saying, you know what, I could go into a different specialty. I don't need to go into something that's going to be this difficult to practice. And certain parts of the country, rural areas, small market areas, it's so hard to find specialists, good care anyway. So even for the people who see themselves as being totally in alignment with what Project 2025 has to say, what Trump and Vance have to say about all of this, I think they might be shocked down the road, and not very far down the road, to find that there are fewer and fewer doctors available to help.
The other thing that is happening statistically, in the states that have bans where abortion is illegal, the number of young women who are going in and having tubal ligation, becoming sterile, is increasing. Because they're saying, I'm not gonna put myself at risk, so I just won't ever get pregnant. So how that is gonna help his natalist idea is just absurd. But that's the unintended consequence for an awful lot of women.
The doctors that are leaving states because
they're leaving the states, the doctors are leaving. Young women are saying, no, I'd rather be sterile than have them control my body. And then all of these parents, all these people who want to be parents are going to be not denied the opportunity. It's the whole thing is completely mishuggah. I think this is something that upsets an awful lot of people. Obviously, it upsets me. Does anybody else want to share anything, any ideas or questions?
Nicole?
Yes.
Lisa, that was awesome. That was very informative. and you were very thorough. So I don't have any questions about that. Can I ask, this is a off-topic question if I can, and you guys can tell me right where to go. I've heard things about Republicans being in place for after the election, not certifying votes and all of that. Are you guys aware of, please tell me Democrats are just as in place and ready to fight legally? Do we know anything about that? That may or may not be anybody's expertise here.
Well, there's an organization online called Lawyers for Good Government. And they already are talking with each other, and that's a national organization. People talking about that. A lot of what they're saying is not really positive. It's kind of scary. There is another organization, Lawyers for Justice. It's lawyer number 4 justice. And they're doing a lot of litigation. The ACLU has already filed cases about some of these voting, the suppression of voting. The Republicans have been very thorough in particular states, passing laws that say that the state attorney general can override the will of the people, and that's in Georgia. There are very, very bad things. And we're not going to even have the integrity of a Pence this time around. Although, obviously, Vice President Harris will still be Vice President Harris on January 6th of 2025. But there are issues for December 11th of 2024 when the votes have to be turned in. And that's where the Republicans are planning things. But yeah, I mean, people are not ignoring this. People are doing what they can. But one of the best things that if we were going to go to really what we want to have happen, we want her to win by such a landslide that they can't. You know, so that means not just a slim margin in Pennsylvania, we need a landslide. And so when you're talking about keeping working, yes, like I recommend many pots of coffee between now and November 5th, because we should be working till we drop as many ways as possible. Robert Reich sent out a notice today about one of the most effective ways that you can increase turnout. And it's talking to 5 people and getting them to vote with you. If you can take 5 people to the polls and take them early, vote early with 5 people, do it. There are websites that you can go to, like vote.org, to see when the deadlines are in all of the states. I made a chart at one point that I think I posted on Rochester for Harris, but make sure that your friends are registered to vote, make sure they've made a plan to vote, and ask them what it is. Because if somebody tells you, yes, I'm going to vote on October 30th at the Susan B. Anthony House at 11 a.m., that person's going to vote. If they just say, I don't know, I might vote on election day, that's not good enough. Nail it down. This was another thing that came up last night. When we broke down the votes in Pennsylvania by district, and Pennsylvania was close in 2020, it was a difference of 5 votes in each of the precincts. When you took the numbers that they won by, it was, if you spread it out across Pennsylvania, 5 votes per precinct. That's what it takes. That's the difference. And that'll be the difference in Wisconsin. That'll be the difference in even Arizona. You know, that's what it will be. And so you need to really believe that you can make that difference. If you can make 5 people in Pennsylvania vote, do it. I'm sorry if I'm getting a little hysterical.
Passionate.
And
we need the passion. We need the passion. We need the drive. We need to keep working. We have to keep believing. Nicole's heard me say this. I got to keep giving that positive energy up, not getting sort of weighted down by, oh my God, what if, right?
right.
Have to
And
keep working
there-
forward.
There are really good things to look at. The early voting turnout, the first 24 hours in Georgia. The early voting turnout was more than double, nearly 3 times the turnout in 2020. So, and in Michigan, the early voters, 55% of them are women. I don't know that all of those women are not Trump supporters, but I gotta believe if 55% of the women, you know, if the vote turns out that it's 55% women, Harris has to get the majority of those. Any other comments and things, Barbara and Donna? Anything that you want to add? Any questions you have? Any objections you have?
Hyperventilating here. Early voting, when do they have to wait till they start counting, or can they start counting as the votes come in?
If the early votes, if you vote early and they are collected, then they're trying, because this is happening in Arizona. One of the guys he was threatened since 2020. He's been threatened for his life, and his term will end in January of 2025 because he got voted out. But he's covering this election. God bless him. And he was talking about the fact that he wants the votes to be collected early so that they can get a better result on election night. Because last time, I don't think Pennsylvania was declared until 4 days after the election. So we don't want that, because that gives the opportunity to say, oh, something happened, this is funky, this isn't right. No, we want them to be counted quicker. And so there are people trying to do that. They're trying to speed up that process. They're also working very hard in North Carolina to get everybody the opportunity to vote despite the floods. And, you know, there are people working on elections that are, the guy who's doing it in Arizona is a Republican. He just happens to have integrity. You know, there are people like that in the world. They're getting voted out of office, but there are people there. So, but I'm sorry.
Good, it's all good, it's all good. Yeah,
Does that answer your question, Barbara?
Yes, thank you. I do have a question. Is there a list or somewhere to find out if people need rides to vote?
Contact the Monroe County Democratic Committee. They have people, they're looking for volunteers to help people get to the polls. Yeah.
Okay.
oh, I want to do that too.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Well, I
Great.
think that's it.
Well, thank you
Lisa.
so
This was
much.
a tough topic. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, thanks
Yeah.
everybody, and keep working.
Thank you, ladies.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Tune in next week.
Yeah, that's right. Education next week.